As a boy, the young David Lean wasn't allowed to go to the cinema. His Quaker parents considered motion pictures to be sinful. Perhaps that early denial helped spur him on through his incredible career. He began at the bottom, as tea-boy at Gaumont Film Studios, then steadily progressed to camera assistant, to editor, and then co-director of Noel Coward's 1942 film In Which We Serve, his directing big break. Over the next decade, Lean put out a run of British classics: Blithe Spirit, Brief Encounter, Great Expectations, and Oliver Twist. And in 1955, he was invited to take part in the programme Film Profile.
Do you remember Brief Encounter, In Which We Serve, Oliver Twist, Sound Barrier, and Hobson's Choice? Because these are just some of the films made by David Lean. Sitting where his actor normally sits and feeling happy?
No, I don't really like it at all. I feel that at any moment I'm going to get up and just go behind the camera there and leave you to it.
Well, I tell you, before you do escape us, we would like, David, to make this quite personal. Some of the things you have liked making, some even that you may not have liked making, some of the problems you've had, and get your view on this business of film making. To start with, is a director's life as ulcer making, as people say?
No, I must tell you, I've never had an ulcer. I hope I never do, but I enjoy this job more than anything I can imagine. I think I'm very lucky. In fact, if I had the money in the bank, I would pay the film people to engage me.
You mentioned money then. Are you concerned with money as a director?
Well, you always have the pressure of money behind you, because making a film is a very expensive business, and if you've got an expensive cast, it can go up to... I have worked on films that the running cost is £2,000 a day. Now, if when you're making that film you hear those pounds clicking into a till all the time, you can lose your head.
Now, you as the director are really the coordinator, aren't you, of cameras and lights and artists and so on?
Yes, as a coordinator. He, making a film concerns, many hundreds of people, and he is the man that gets them all together to put that final result onto the screen.
I would like to take you back, David, to your own start as a cutter, because I've always understood that you place enormous emphasis on this question of cutting.
Yes, well, personally, I enjoy cutting almost as much as direction, I think. I find it a fascinating job. Most people, I think that cutting is a question of cutting out things. It's nothing to do with cutting out things at all. Mm-hmm. It's the juxtaposition of pictures. And you can make or mar a film by cutting. You can't make a bad film good. You can make it tolerable sometimes, and you can certainly ruin a good film.
But as a member of the public sitting there watching your film go through, would I recognize a piece of good cutting?
I hope not. Like all technique, one should be completely unconscious of it. And in fact, one should imagine that a film was started to be shot in the morning or whenever the film opens, and it was a continuous process right up to the end. No, you shouldn't be conscious of it at all.
Now, I'd like to put you on the spot now and ask you to choose from one of your own films the piece of cutting with which you were particularly pleased.
Well, I think I would choose a bit out of Oliver Twist, which was the Murder of Nancy by Bill Sykes. This hasn't got a word of dialogue in it, and it is just cutting, just going from one picture to another, so that those numbers of pictures tell a story.
Small point, David, but however did you get a dog to behave as competently as that?
Well, it was quite simple, really. When we found the answer, this dog was the most lethargic dog I've ever met, and he was meant to be terribly fierce. And somebody had the bright idea of going into the property department, and in the property department, they found a stuffed cat. Now, we brought that onto the set, showed the dog the cat, and it went raving mad. So all we had to do was to hold the dog, open that door he was trying to scrabble through, and show the dog the cat, shut the door, shove the cat's tail under the door, waggle it. I said action. We withdrew the cat's tail, and the dog just went like a bomb after this cat. It's a very bad story, I think, to tell, really, but...
Well, I still think he's a very
It's a long time
competent
ago.
performer, and I hope you've got him slapped under contract. Now, you draw our attention to the lack of dialogue. What are your views on this question of use of dialogue?
Well, I must say, I find dialogue a bore for the most part. I think that if you look back on any film you've seen, you don't remember lines of dialogue, you remember pictures. And incidentally, I think people in the movie business are going to concentrate more on pictures than on dialogue, because fortunately, you boys have got to sit people down like me and have them talk and talk and talk. Well, I think we can beat you by showing pictures. At least I hope so. You're the enemy.
Let's talk for a moment about the problem of directing artists. Now, you yourself were never an actor, were you?
No, I was never an actor. I always suspect that directors are frustrated actors, but this is my big moment. I think it'll be my last.
But don't you feel diffident telling an actor how to do his job?
Oh, when I started in directing actors, I expected at any moment they'd turn around and say, "What on earth do you know about it?" And I would have said, "Well, I don't."
Really give them a mood to interpret and let them do it in their own way?
Well, it's several things with actors. First of all, I suppose that all of us are wonderful actors in our bath. But as soon as you have one of these horrible instruments pointing at you, or as soon as you're on a stage, you start to become paralyzed. And it's half the director's job is taking the nerves out of actors, because nearly all actors are very, very nervous when they start making a picture. The sweat will pour off them. You will see the cigarettes in their hands, or if they have to have papers to hold, you will see them start to shake.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a terrifying instrument. Well, now the director's got to break that down, make them feel completely at ease. And then the next job he's got to do is to ensure that they think right, because acting for the cinema is purely a question of thought. If you see an amateur stage show, people pull faces. Acting is not pulling faces, it's thinking. And on the screen, even in a great big long shot, where the screen's that size and the actor's that size and he's walking away, if he's not thinking right, there'll be something wrong with his walk. I don't know how it happens, but it does. And an actor's got to know what he's thinking every moment during a scene.
Now, I watched you direct once, and there was none of this flamboyant shouting at actors. You talk very quietly indeed. That, I take it, is deliberate.
Yes, it is deliberate. What I'm really doing is I'm tickling a talent. I'm trying to draw their imagination out.
That's a nice idea.
They'll rehearse a scene, and I'll say, yes, that's fine. Now, try to give it a bit more edge. Try to do this, try to do that. And then gradually, Carol Reed uses a wonderful expression. He says that getting actors ready to do a scene is rather like lining up horses at a tape. And when they're keyed up to a certain point, boom, down goes the tape, up they go and off they go. And if the camera's not ready or the sound breaks down, as it very often does, well, that's the end of the game, because you have to start all over again. Yes, that's right, yes.
I would imagine that a director can obviously make or break himself by the casting. Is casting done largely by hunches?
Yes, you do. You write a script or work on a script, and then you get a picture of a certain person in your mind, of course, and then you begin to think what actor could fit into that picture.
I think been some of the most successful long, odd casting that you've done.
Oh, well, I think it's a story against myself, really, because on Great Expectations, Alec Guinness played the part of a pale young gentleman. I don't know if you remember, but this is what he looked like. Well, that's how Alec looked in Great Expectations. Now, after I'd finished that film, I decided to make Oliver Twist, and in it was the part of Fagin. Alec came to me and said, I would like to play Fagin. Now, this is what Fagin looked like in Cruikshank's drawings. Now, as a result of this, I said to Alec, you're out of your mind, you can't play that. And he said, well, look, just give me a screen test, just give me a test. I'll put a little makeup on and do various things, and I think I can do it. I said, well, I think you're mad, but all right, do it. And this is what he did.
Clever dogs. Clever dogs.
What a long shot, David, that came off brilliantly.
Well, it came off through no fault of mine. That was just Alec, and since then, as we all know, he's played many, many different parts. But at the time, of course, that was quite extraordinary.
Mm-hmm. And now for the $64 question. What, in your opinion, is it that makes and distinguishes your great international star?
Well, I think it's two things. One, way out in front, personality. And two, I think I can compare a star with a star tennis player. A star will say his line, he'll wind it up in a ball and flick it at the other actor. The other actor will speak, the star will catch it, wind it up and flip it back. And a sort of tennis match takes place. When, with an ordinary actor, they can be very good, but they just haven't got that quality of throwing it back. They'll say their line, and that's an end of it. The star will catch it, and bong, back it goes quickly.
So really, to get the best out of a star, you need another star playing the other side of the net.
Of course. Every actor, it is a sort of duel. If you get two really good actors together, they'll fence with each other. And, of course, the best comes out of them.
Lean brought out the best in his next two films, Bridge on the River Kwai and Lawrence of Arabia. But he would often have difficult relationships with actors, which many put down to his perfectionism and hard work ethic. Omar Sharif considered Lean a brilliant man and once described himself as one of the few actors Lean actually liked. But that's not how Sharif was feeling in this next programme, which followed the making of another of Lean's epics, Doctor Zhivago, in 1965.
How's that, Fred?
Good. Now I've got to see you sitting, Omar.
He's a man who's very easy to hate. In other words, it is very easy to hate David and very difficult to like him. He's a very hard man, a very selfish man, who has no pity for anyone and none for himself either, which is a very rare thing. He has no self-pity and no self-indulgence. And therefore, it is very difficult for him to pity anybody else or to feel sorry for anybody, however tired they may be. And he considers everybody on the set, everybody who's helping to make the film, as objects rather than as people. They are the things that are making his film. And, well, you can see how easy it is if you think that he's considering you as an object, how easy it is to be terribly unhappy and rather hate him for it. I know that I have, at the end of many days shooting, felt terrible hate for him. And I know, for instance, most of the people who have worked with him and who work with him rather dislike him because he drives them too hard and he uses them.
Now, the $64,000 question, of course, was who played Zhivago. Now, Zhivago's a very passive part, and I think he's a poet and a doctor, but the fatal pitfall, I think, would have been to cast too much with the type. If I'd had a very studious young man, I think he'd tend to be a bore in the picture, and so I thought I will go for immense good looks. And I thought of Omar, because he'd played this sheikh in Lawrence who came out of the Mirage, and he's a very sensitive actor, and we happen to work very well together. He catches on, and I think it works, and I thought I could get this Russian poet out of him. And I backed that hunch. A lot of people thought I was mad.
He never loses his temper. I've very rarely seen him lose his temper. He's just more or less seems to be at the same pitch, sometimes terribly worried, obviously, but more or less at the same pitch. But he's certainly intimate. Not a man, but I mean, director, very intimate. I don't know him socially, and I only know him as a director, because he's very quiet, retiring, leads a very retiring life, as far as I can see. I mean, I don't know, he might be up every night boozing away, but I don't think so. He takes you away and sort of quietly talks to you about exactly what he wants, and then he'll say to everybody, now shut up and go away and leave.
And look, thousands of coffers at the back. Get them all up.
Okay, just right. Let's get everybody up and start some hands to be on.
You know, all the wanderers, all of them, out.
Now, very quiet, silencio.
All right, Omar. Action.
I suppose I don't have much contact with actors off the set because I have so much contact with them on the set. I'm, as it were, trying to get things out of them. I'm squeezing them a little. I'm encouraging them. I'm a general sort of wet nurse to actors.
MGM welcomed Lean's decision to film the bulk of Doctor Zhivago in Spain, a country that hasn't yet priced itself out of the epic market. Lean was able to hire local extras at 9 shillings a day. Stunt horsemen cost a tenth of what they would in Britain. Lean needed snow, hundreds of tons of it, so the entire output of a local marble quarry was bought and crushed into white powder, which was scattered over this Spanish plain in high summer to recreate Russia in midwinter. A forest of trees was sprayed with white plastic snow. He needed a cold winter mist, so 100 German smoke machines were brought in to do the job. It all looked expensive and would have been anywhere else in the world, but this was Spain. In all, this set cost just £2,000 to erect. Lean was hard at work.
Yesterday I was out on Country Road with 400 soldiers and a cart. Now, I had to make a scene out of 400 soldiers and a cart. It's not all that easy. It takes time. But once I've decided on the plan, we're off and we shoot fast. And that's it. And of course, there's this awful pressure of money all the time, which if I thought about it too much, it'd drive me insane. I always imagine, if I'm not careful, of some ghastly fruit machine with dollars clicking through it and spilling onto the floor every second.
Action! Try it again.
With 2/3 of the film shot, it became clear to MGM that Lean might present them not only with a box office success, but with a film that could win an Academy Award. And an Oscar could be worth $5 million at the box office.
Alto!
Good. Okay.
Open the doors, turn on the fans. Open the doors and turn the fans on, boys.
The pace was stepped up to complete the picture before the end of the year and so qualify for the next awards. By this time, Lean himself was working 16 or 18 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Generally lose, I don't know, about 2 stone during the picture. One's tummy goes, one's in great physical shape, and after about a week of getting up at 11, one feels fine. But it's a pretty killing job. I haven't had a Sunday off, for instance, for, well, as long as I can remember. I go into the cutting rooms when the unit have a Sunday off, and it's pretty tough, but I get very excited by making a movie, and I suppose it's a kind of nervous energy. I'm tired now, as I said to you before, but I suppose the nerve of that infernal machine wakes me up.
At the end of September, Lean's camera turned for the last time. The studio lights went out, the props were taken away, the actors went home to Hollywood, Cairo, Rome and London. The technicians cleared up, and then they too went home to Penge, Pinner, Braintree and Horsham. Everybody was happy. The deadline for the Oscars had been met. And shortly after everybody had left, the first advertisements for the film appeared. MGM had done what they said they would. David Lean was given the star billing. But there was still a lot of work for Lean. He was to fly to Hollywood to edit the picture there. But the most difficult phase was over.
I remember I used to go, when I was young, on a lot of cruises. And they lasted about 2 weeks, and at the end of them it was rather sad because one made all sorts of friendships and so forth and so on. There was a last farewell dinner, etc., etc. Rather sad. It's exactly the same with making a film, but my cruise lasts a year, and I work day in, day out with these technicians who obviously I've become very fond of. We work very, very close together, and at the end of it, the bottom falls out of everything in a way. One's suddenly at a loose end. One thing is good, though, that it's glorious to be anonymous for a moment.
Perhaps this time it won't be so easy to be anonymous. Not so easy to slip away out of the limelight and become an ordinary, unrecognized tourist. MGM are creating an image, a box office draw. From now on, David Lean will have to live with that image all the time.
After 3 consecutive epics and 3 big international hits, expectations were high for Lean's next film. But although it won 2 Oscars, the critics' reaction to Ryan's Daughter was so negative that it was 14 years before Lean released another film. And that was his adaptation of the E.M. Forster novel Passage to India. And whilst on location, Lean spoke about the project to the BBC reporter Mark Tully.
Forster mistrusted movie makers. The film rights were only sold after his death. Lean then spent 18 months writing his script and had to be vetted by the guardians of Forster's masterpiece, the Fellows of King's College, Cambridge.
I did the script, and they were very polite, and they asked me to come along after having read it for lunch. And I was just about to start on the fish, and they started in on me, and I said, I'd wish you'd waited till the sweet. And they were very, very nice indeed. And after about 2 hours, they were very kind and just gave it their blessing.
How much difference is there between Lean's Passage to India and Forster's Passage to India?
He's a writer, I'm a filmmaker. I like movies, and I've tried to make it a movie that I would like to see. The end is different, certainly, but I think I wouldn't be ashamed for Forster to read the script. I think I stuck with his characters, and on the whole, given the limitations of time, I mean, what's one doing? One's doing something in 2 hours, book that thick. It's a sort of sketch of it, and I'm extracting a movie from it. Those who want to read Forster, read the book. Those who want to go to a movie, and don't read, come and see our film. Poor old English, they've had a rough time in the films lately. And it's because, of course, colonialism has gone out of fashion, so it's quite easy to take pot shots of a lot of idiots, stuffy idiots, you know?
Yes.
And quite honestly, I think Forster did that too. And I think he felt a bit guilty about it. I mean, he certainly had a blast when the book came out. And I'm trying to keep a balance, I don't know. I'm trying to tell a good story, that's really what I'm trying to do.
Helping to tell the story is an army from England. They've even imported much of their own food, including kippers for breakfast. But meals aren't the production's only administrative problem. Perhaps the worst is India's notorious red tape.
I took my first baptism of fire was going through the customs. You know, it takes about 2.5 hours to get through the customs if you've got any apparatus, as you no doubt know with that thing. And they look at every lens. Are you going to sell this?
Yes.
How much film have you got? Are you going to sell it? No, I wouldn't have bought it to sell it. And so forth and so on. And after 2 hours, one hates the country. And then, of course, it's wonderful.
You have certain problems still with the government, for instance, don't you? That you still have to have someone here checking that you're shooting according to the script. Does that annoy you?
They've been very good to me.
The Indians have been so kind, they've even allowed the production to monopolise the branch line from Connaught to Ooty.
Well, if you are, that's...
At 75, Lean's as demanding as ever, taking and retaking scenes until he gets what he wants.
That's good, that hat.
That costs, but then producers can't argue with a man whose last 4 films grossed £120 million, not to mention the Oscars. But not everyone appreciates the Lean style.
It's often said that as a director you are, in a way, more concerned with the visual than with the performance of the actors.
Well, balls. I like spectacle. When I say spectacle, I don't think you can just put on a load of spectacle and expect it to be successful with the public. Of course you've got to have a foreground action. And it's awfully easy for critics to say, oh, the action, the background swamped the foreground. But I don't think I've done that.
And you find the public react to, the people who go to see your films react to the spectacular?
Well, I haven't done badly, no.
Passage to India was an international sensation, described as one of the cinema's greatest ever screen adaptations. In 1984, the year of its release, Lean was knighted by the Queen for his services to the cinema. 4 years later, the great man's 80th birthday was marked by Barry Norman with a special edition of Film 88.
How important was it to have been an editor when you finally became a director?
It's everything. You know, I often wonder at directors who've never been editors. Because... Oh, really? Well, it's right. I just don't understand how they go to work. Because I'm sitting there, and if I'm directing you, I'm saying, good to myself. Yes, I can cut to the 2-shot there. I have to retake that in the close-up. That'll be good on him. And so, all right, cut. Now, let's go again. One more take. And that sort of thing, you know. And I kind of piece it together as we're making it. And editing is one of the, if not the, chief of the tools of my trade.
An immensely successful film, and another Oscar for you. How important do you think Oscars are?
Well, if you have no hope of getting one, they're despised. But if you have, they're very important.
That's very honest, I must say. It's easy
very
to
nice.
Yes, it's easy to despise them if you're not in the running, isn't it?
That's right.
Because with the next film, Doctor Zhivago, you very nearly did the hat trick. You were nominated yet again. But on that one, you lost out the Best Picture to Sound of Music, I believe. Was that a little galling?
Oh, terribly, you know. Yes, but we got, you know, I tell you what killed us. Doctor Zhivago got the most terrible notices, worldwide. I remember the premiere in New York, they gave a dinner at the top of one of the big hotels there, and I said, why are they all reading newspapers? They said, well, the criticisms are coming, and everybody was sitting around the table reading the newspapers. And at the end of the dinner, they all came and sort of shook my hand and said, well, David, I liked it. That sort of thing. And that did nothing to help the film. And it was disaster. And we had MGM then had a marvellous chap called Bob O'Brien, who was the boss. And he said, David, he said, I think this film's great. I'm going to back it. And he said, I'm going to spend another $1 million. And he spent $1 million on publicity and partly on keeping it on at the theatre where you could throw rocks around without loss of life. And first week empty, second week empty, third week started to increase, and the fourth week it was packed. And we took off, and that film earned me more money than all my other films put together to date.
Well, it's had an enduring popularity, that film, hasn't it? What do you think it was that gave it that?
Well, it's your old thing. I was listening to you a couple of weeks ago, Story. It's a wonderful story, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful. And you want to know what happens next. And wonderful characters, you know? Yeah. And Julie, which was quite a face.
I was amazed that, for 14 years after Ryan's Daughter, you never made another film. Why? Why not? Was it because it got such a bad review, or bad reviews?
Well, I was very stupid, as a matter of fact. I thought, why? They were universe. I don't think there was one good notice for Ryan's Daughter, really not one. And I thought, why am I doing this? You know, rather stupidly, and I went off and I started travelling.
In the end, it was E.M. Forster's novel about the British Raj, A Passage to India, that brought Lean back to work at the age of 76, although in the intervening years he had spent a great deal of time trying and failing to set up productions of both The Bounty and Gandhi.
Were you pleased with The Passage to India in the end?
Sort of.
So a lot of people criticised your choice of Alec Guinness to play an Indian. Would you, with hindsight, would you do that again?
I don't think really. I think Alec could perfectly well have played an Indian. I think he got scared of it. I remember him saying to me once, I think you were asking me to give an imitation of Peter Sellers, which in fact I wasn't.
Well, it would have been disastrous, wouldn't it?
It would, rather. And so I don't think that was one of his best performances, no.
You have been criticised by people who say that your films don't actually say a lot, by which I imagine that they have no message for mankind. Is this a criticism that irks you at all?
No, not at all.
What are you looking for when you're making a film? What do you want to do?
I want to make something that, if I went to the cinema and wasn't me, I would enjoy watching. As I told you, I just love movies. And I would like to make good movies. And I think part of making a good movie, or the greater part of it, is a good story, which I know is out of fashion, and good characters. I mean, in the old days, when one went to the movies, one used to feel that one had been out and met some fascinating people. I mean, I saw the other day The Untouchables on an aeroplane, to be quite honest. And I didn't really like it at all.
You know, for somebody who says, and indeed I believe you, that you love making movies, you've made very few, 16 films in 46 years, I think. Why is that?
Oh, it scares me stiff. You know, I suppose, if I take on a movie, I want terribly to do it frightfully well. So therefore, one's got to have a very, very good script. So I spend an inordinate amount of time choosing the subject and then working on the script. And I suppose it's fair, really, to put your foot in the water.
But after all this time, and couple of Oscars and several nominations, I would have thought you could have done without the fear. You could have got rid of that by now.
It doesn't work like that, does it? Do you ever get nervous when...
All the time, yeah.
And you're doing this job? You do, yes. Well, there you are. That's the answer. It's a sort of... it's a difficult job. I mean, I feel fairly at home with you here because I'm sort of feeling my element too. And I know you like movies, but when you see that eye boring into you, it is difficult. And at this minute, my lips are rather dry. It's very difficult.
Yes, this doesn't hardly reconciles with another criticism which I've been looking into your critics, and one of them said that you have a dictatorial urge to control every aspect of the film when you're making it. Would you disagree? You might possibly disagree with dictatorial, but would you disagree with any of the rest of it, or would you disagree with none of it?
I do like to keep a close hold on everything. And I think that is what being a director is. He's encouraging a talent, encouraging things that he saw in the negative in his mind when he was doing the script, and suppressing things that seem to go against it. And so in that sort of way, I'm a kind of gentle dictator.
As things turned out, Passage to India would be Lean's last picture, which was not how he wanted things. He spent his final years trying hard to put together an adaptation of Joseph Conrad's novel Nostromo, but it was not to be, and in 1991 he died, aged 83. Eulogists spoke of his towering visual imagination and incredible ambition. At the turn of the millennium, the BFI's list of the 100 best British movies ever made had 3 of his in the top 5. Proof, if it were needed, that just like his films, the man's talent was truly epic.